Oh, hi everybody. Happy New Year. Oh, we got the Batman villain thing going on again. Let me see if I can get this a little straighter. There we go. That's better. Um, yeah, happy New Year. Happy January 2nd, everyone. I hope you had a great set of holidays. I know we took last week off. Um, and actually had quite a bit of nature to celebrate in between. It has been so unseasonably warm out. As we'll see in some of the videos, we've been seeing some interesting responses on the part of our wild neighbors. But before we launch into that, I wanted to share with you a couple of things I got for received for the December holidays. One, I'm hoping this will become a part of future good-natured get-togethers. Night vision binoculars. My sister-in-law got me these, and it wasn't something I asked for, but I think it's something I'm going to have a lot of fun with because it appears that I can take pictures with it. Local folks, neighbors, if you see me outside with these, it almost reminds me of the old Viewmasters, that you used to look at slides at, but there's a display inside here that lights up and lets us take a look at what's going on at night. Now, a few weeks ago, the great horned owls were really hooting up a storm, and I went out a few times hoping to see their outlines, on rooftops or in trees, and I didn't have any luck. So I'm hoping these might help figure out where they are nesting or going to be nesting this year. Thing is, I haven't heard them lately. Could be they decided this area wasn't suitable. Could be I'm not listening at the right time. They were calling for a while, right around dinner time, like 6, 7 o'clock. It would be dark out, but not at all late. And it has been a little while. Good for a roommate here. It has been a little while since I've seen them, but night vision binoculars. If oh, thanks, Sarah. Maybe I will. I'll bring my new toy along, and maybe we can track down the owl party in your yard. But yeah, this was kind of cool, completely unexpected. And like I said, I hope to be incorporating some of the pictures from it at a future gathering on a Tuesday night. And then next, this was fun. This was a box I got at work. This is a gentleman who reads the column in the newspaper, and he says, I've been sorting through my very large book collection, and I came across these items that I hope you might like. I don't know if you're interested in antique books, but with your extensive reading on various subjects, I thought you'd at least like to see these. They belong to my late father-in-law, whose name was printed in the flower book that's about 90 years old. The other is about 110 years old. And other than the protective box, it appears almost as if it's never been opened. So yeah, these are really cool. This flower, as he said, this flower book dates back to the 1930s. And it's organized by family, which if you've looked in field guides at all or studied, in fact, there's a saying, you can't know the flower till you know the family. And it does really help. It doesn't have to be flowers either. It works actually with a lot of different taxonomic groups, but it's got a lot of, each page is illustrated and has pretty complete descriptions of the flowers that go along with it. The thing I like best about it is that it will fit nicely in a pocket. I don't know if I want to take it out. I don't know if I can trust myself with something that is printed in 1932. So yeah, 90, gosh, going on 92 years old. Right here on the very first thing that's pictured is the cattail family. And even back then, they listed both the narrow-leaf cattail and the broadleaf, or what they are calling in here the common cattail. Of course, today we see a hybrid of those two, the narrow-leaf cattail combined with the broadleaf, and it's kind of hard to sort out which one is which, but it looks as though when this was printed that it just says that the leaf is not as large as the broadleaf. The narrow leaf is not as large as the broadleaf. It was the narrow leaf at this time was found in the extreme northeast, in the south, and as far west as Michigan and Missouri. I think it's spread a bit beyond that these days. But it's kind of fun to look back and see way things were back then and the way they are now. I found that especially true with this book, the bird book. And I was thinking that maybe you could help me figure out what I'm missing with this. So I opened this book up, and the first thing on this page, the first species listed in here, and it is land birds. Okay, so there's no waterfowl in here, there's no ducks, there's no geese. So rather than starting out with those groups, the first bird in here, if you can read that, the Carolina parakeet, which of course now is considered extinct. This was published in 19, I think this was a second edition. It was first published in 1908, 1906, and then secondly in 1909. So they've got the Carolina parakeet listed as being formerly in the southern states, but now confined to the interior of Florida and possibly Oklahoma. So it was still around at that time. When I saw that, I got curious to see what else might be in here. So I looked up, you might know where this is going, woodpeckers, and ivory-billed woodpecker is listed on page 23. So what do they say about that? They say that ivory-billed right here, and it says that these are the largest and most rare of the woodpeckers found within our borders. Their decline in numbers is due to a certain extent to the killing of them because of their size and beauty, but chiefly on account of cutting off of a great deal of the heavy timber where they nest. They are very powerful birds and often scale the bark off the greater portion of a tree in search of insects and grubs, while they will bore into the heart of a living tree to make their home. They range is listed as formerly the South Atlantic states and west to Texas and Indian Territory, but now confined to a few isolated portions of Florida and possibly Indian Territory. So I thought that was kind of cool. That got me to thinking about the passenger pigeon. You know, the last passenger pigeon, Martha, she was the last known representative of this species. She was living in the Cincinnati Zoo, all by her lonesome after her mate George died, and she died in 1914. Well, when I looked up, and I've looked on every page in here, I can't find, there's no passenger pigeon, and there's no mourning doves. There's like a group of birds that's, all of the doves are missing, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what I'm missing. This is, again, it's land birds. So again, I get that the waterfowl's not in here, but I don't know if maybe those were considered game birds and that would be, excluded from this book. Trying to think, like, let's see, would like grouse or prairie chickens. Yeah, see, those aren't in here. Let's see. Yeah, those aren't in here either. So maybe, it was just, this book doesn't include birds that would be considered game birds. This is kind of cool. The towhee had another name I'd never heard of before. Again, that looks a little fuzzy there. Can you read that? The chewink. And it doesn't give a, I guess chewink is a variation on the call, which is listed as a sharp cheerink. So I just love looking at these old things. Now, I did also, since we looked up some birds that have now gone extinct, I did want to see if there were things like the English house sparrow in here. And sure enough, 105. Let's see what their take on house sparrows is. Now, sparrows are, the house sparrow, as much of a pest as it is here in the United States, it is in decline in a lot of its actual range over across the pond. Let's see here. That's it, was page 105. English. I'm sorry, it's on page 88. Boy, I hope after this book being, so kept so carefully for 106 years, no, 116 years. I hope I don't wear it out flipping through it here. Okay, here we go. English sparrow. These street urchins were introduced into our country from Europe about 1850 and have since multiplied and spread out so that they are now found in all parts of our land, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Heretofore, they have confined themselves chiefly in the immediate vicinity of the larger cities and towns, but it is now noted with alarm that they are apparently spreading out to the surrounding countryside. They are very hardy creatures, able to stand our most rigorous winters. They are fighters and bullies from the time they leave the egg, and few of our native birds will attempt to live in the neighborhood with them. Their nests are made of straw and rubbish piled high behind blinds in the tops of electric lights or crevices of buildings, sometimes in large, unsightly heaps of straw and trees. They raise 3 to 4 broods a year in all seasons, 5 to 7 whitish eggs scratched with black. The range, again, 116 years ago, the whole of the United States and southern Canada. Let's do one more, folks, since we're on a roll here. Let's see if the European starling, let's see, page 61. Let's see what we have to say here. That's listed in amongst the blackbirds. All right, so here's our starling. They are good-looking birds, aren't they? I think they're quite attractive, especially when they lose the speckled look like they have now. And get into their breeding plumage, which their breeding plumage is actually just their the speckles that they're wearing right now. That's on the end of their feathers. That wears off, and they acquire this iridescent black with the yellow bill. Uh-oh, another furry roommate coming in. For the starling, it says they have a metallic green and purple plumage, heavily spotted above and below with buffy or white. These European birds were introduced into New York a number of years ago and are now common here and spreading to other localities in Connecticut and about New York City, which that's where they were released. They live about the streets and in the parks, building their nests in crevices of buildings, and especially in the framework of the elevated railroads of the city, and less often in trees. They lay from 4 to 6 pale blue unspotted eggs. How they will affect other bird life in case they eventually become common throughout the country is a matter of conjecture. But from what I have seen of them, they are quarrelsome and are masters of the English sparrow, and may continue their domineering tactics to the extent of driving more of our songbirds from the cities. That's kind of prophetic, huh? 19, looking ahead from 1908. So yeah, very cool. Couple of things here. I gotta put this away carefully, and then put it somewhere that these guys aren't going to decide to try and help themselves. All right, let's move on here to the last couple of weeks review of some slides here. And I tell you, every week it's like a whole new thing to me. All right, we're going to share the screen, and we are going to open up here and go to our slides for today. Move this window away from the sheet. All right, so we're going to go back a couple of weeks. This picture was taken, I believe it was the Friday before Christmas, which would have been what, the 21st? 22nd of December. And look at all of those geese. I heard some grumblings about geese a couple different places I've been over the last couple of weeks. People were saying, oh, there's so many geese everywhere. What are we going to do? I did want to remind those people, and I'll mention it here too. What we're seeing is maybe double or more what we see in the summertime. Our summer goose population consists of our resident non-migratory adults, the giant subspecies of Canada goose. They're here to raise their young. Those young then stay with the parents through their first winter in they grow quickly to the same size as their parents. It takes them a few years before they reach breeding age, before they mature to the point of choosing a mate and raising a family of their own. So they actually, those young, the first couple of years, they actually do often leave this area and travel north, but then they still consider this home, and they come back here for the winter, and they come back here when it's time to raise their young. So we're seeing the return of those kind of, I guess you'd call them subadults. They're not quite old enough to breed yet, so they're back here, joining the resident geese that were here all along. And then we've got some migratory species that come to this area that used to migrate farther south than they do now. So we've got, and they're very similar in size to the giant Canada goose, which is the normal one that we see here. So we've got kind of this mishmash of almost identical looking subspecies. When you see a group like this, they tend to spook pretty easily. Now I took this picture. You can probably tell I took it from my car. I just rolled the window down. They did get a little edgy as the car stopped, and that made them sort of wary. And then they kind of gradually started making their way farther away. But I mean, there are geese as far as the eye can see. The geese that don't live here year round, the ones that are here visiting, tend to spook a little bit easier than the birds that are used to seeing us all the time. Those guys, unfortunately, they even a lot of the resident geese look to people as sources of food for handouts, but these geese that are only visiting here, they do spook pretty easily. Now, they were watching me, but they didn't really, they stuck around. They didn't take off. I eventually got tired of watching them and went on to, I was actually headed to a meeting at Hickory that day. But something else came along after that. I think I saw someone walking. They may have had a dog with them, but anyway, the whole group, this whole flock, or probably combined flocks, they all took off, and it was absolutely deafening. They took off. You could, the honking that was going on was just incredible. I don't know if they returned later on. When I left the nature center later, the field was empty, so maybe they just took off and went to a cornfield or something. But it's really quite a sight, and it's something we'll continue to see now through January and into February as the days get longer, and I'd say the temperatures warm up, but they are pretty darn warm right now. But as we get closer to spring, those geese that are visiting here are gonna return back, start heading back north again, and the population that we see around here will start to go back down. Still have a lot, but there's a whole lot more right now thanks to our migratory visitors. All right, let's zoom back down here and go on to our next slide. So after I parked the car, I went up and noticed these tracks. So a few weeks ago, I think I showed some tracks. This is the sidewalk out in front of Hickory Knolls, out in front of the nature center. And there were a fair amount of deer tracks. Now, this is an area that our facilities crew had added. There's additional lights that have been put in, additional poles. There was some trenching that was done to put more wiring in. So there's kind of this path now that runs through the front rain gardens that are by the nature center and the parking lot. And I noticed a few weeks ago that the deer were using that path. This, to me, looks like the work of a raccoon. If we look at the somewhat short spacing between these really large paws, I think these are, what we're seeing are the footfalls of the back feet of the animal as it lumbers along. Raccoons kind of walk like bears. They move, they waddle from side to side, and the stride here between these steps isn't very long. So looks like there is a raccoon possibly hanging out here. Looks like it went out and it came back. There is a culvert underneath this sidewalk too. What this sidewalk does here, it spans two different rain gardens. There's one here which is closer to the building, and one over here which is farther away. And then there's a series of drains that connects them, and then they eventually run out and tie into a larger drainage system. But yeah, I think we've got, in addition to the deer that have been making use of the man-made pathway through the mud, now we've got some raccoons hanging out there too. And while we're on the subject of tracks, this was not at Hickory Knolls, but this, I think I've mentioned this a time or two before during our meetings. This is a little, I guess you'd call it a hobby. Something I started doing a few years ago was taking pictures of permanent tracks, tracks that are in concrete. And it always kind of cracks me up when I think of, a hardworking concrete professional who's been putting these smooth surfaces down for, and then they go home satisfied with a job well done, and then a squirrel comes along and we can tell this is a squirrel by the shape of the feet. And if we zoom in here on some of the tracks, squirrels leave their tracks in kind of a square. So SQ square, SQ squirrel, you can put those two together. Here's the front feet that come down first. So front left, front right, and then here's the rear foot that comes down after it. And they kind of leapfrog their way along as they're hopping about. So this was on one way. I was actually I was walking home from downtown Geneva, and I have walked on the sidewalk. Gosh, for 30 years I've gone over this, and I never noticed that these tracks were there. And then the next block, different concrete, probably different squirrel too, but same kind of tracks. If we zoom in, we could see this one looks like it jumped here and then it ran. I must have gotten spooned. Maybe somebody said, "Hey, you squirrel, get off my concrete," but it took off in this direction. You could see the paired landing of the front feet and the back feet as it ran along, getting quickly off of the freshly laid cement. Yeah, so it's, I don't know if you guys, I've got gosh, I think I found squirrels and chipmunks, mice, cats and dogs. The neighbor kid left his sneaker marks, and when we got some new sidewalks here, probably 25 years ago. But I've also got a raccoon and an opossum with a tail drag. So it is kind of a fun hobby, and it's something that they're always going to be there. I've also got leaves too. I think maple and oak. So it's kind of a fun thing. It's also is a good reminder to me to maybe not always be looking down, maybe look up sometimes. I just have that habit, but it's two more for the collection of permanent tracks on cement. And then this is back out at Hickory Knolls. This would have been, I believe, after Christmas. This is the remains of a squirrel nest, also known as a dray, that must have fallen down or blown out of a tree. These things, a well-made squirrel nest is really a marvel because they are able to intertwine bits of branches, they'll chew, sometimes even chew off twigs, and they weave them together with leaves, and they make a really solid, weatherproof enclosure for themselves. They can climb up inside and be protected from the wind and the precipitation. But a poorly made squirrel's nest isn't gonna do the trick. It's gonna fall down. One time, gosh, this was years ago when I was working at Red Oak. I watched there were two young squirrels that were making what I'm guessing were their first nests. They were in two different trees, but I was watching them while I was working at the front desk. I'd look out every once in a while, and they were carrying these mouthfuls of leaves up in the tree. The one squirrel seemed to have a little better knack than the other one, or maybe it just had a better sight than the other one. It would carry leaves up, come down, carry more leaves up, and I could see progress. The other squirrel kept carrying leaves up, and then before it even got back down to gather more, those leaves would fall. And it was just sort of this endless fruitless task that it was performing, where it kept putting leaves up and they kept falling down. So it does, I think it's a skill that comes with trial and error and practice. Now, we did poke around a little bit on this nest, and you can see these, it looked like these twigs were gnawed off. And it was done at a time when the leaves were still green. So maybe I'm not giving the squirrel enough credit. Maybe it's stayed up until it was no longer needed. But it is something that is an essential skill that squirrels have to learn. Ideally, they would all stay in, I think if they had their druthers, they would all stay in tree cavities, but there's just not enough cavities to go around. Second, most squirrels will have at least two nests that they call home. So if something happens to one, they have another one as a backup. So I'm hoping that whoever called this nest home did have something else that it could take refuge in, because that one was done. And then I wanted to give you a little update. I did try again with the pine needle Sprite, and the dogs got into this one before I was able to. They got into the other one as well, the one that didn't taste good that we tasted the last time we got together. I left the top off of that one, and they got into that. And this one, I haven't found any damp puddles or anything, so I think they must have lapped the whole thing up. But I'm still trying. I'm going to harvest yet again some more needles, and we're going to keep trying to see if we can get this one right. The pine needle Sprite, putting the needles from these were white pine needles, but it says you can use other types of pine too, with 2 cups of pine needles, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and then enough water to cover it in a mason jar. Let it sit for 3 days, and let the natural yeast on the pine needles feed on the sugar that's placed in the water. And supposedly then that creates carbonation or bubbles, and you have a Sprite-like beverage. Gonna keep trying, see if we can get it right. Yeah. Shoot the lid off there. Okay, so let's go up. This was Christmas Day, and I thought this was notable enough to capture on video. I left my brother's house Christmas night, and what to my wondering eye should appear but worms. There were worms all over the driveway. I remember a few years back writing a nature column, the Good Natured column, about Christmas worms, but that was, I think, 2 weeks in advance of the holiday. When by the time we got to Christmas, um, I think we had gotten some colder weather. But this is for the archives as we look back in future years over what the weather was like. It was warm enough on Christmas night that the worms were out and active. How about that? Now, going from one slimy creature to another. So this was just sort of I guess you'd call it a reminder. I had occasion to visit my friend Peggy, who she's the naturalist for DeKalb County. She works for U of I Extension and also the DeKalb County Farm Bureau. And having a nature center, she gets all kinds of interesting deliveries the same way we do here in St. Charles. Well, this is a little creature that came in with a load of landscaping materials. I don't know if it was a mulch or a bark or stone or something, but I believe it was delivered from California. And it's a family-owned business, and one of the kids of the family was quite concerned because this snail had gotten injured during the transport of the material. If we look here, we zoom in here, we can see this snail. Its shell actually was cracked and broken here, but the snail itself, the body, seems to be okay. It's feeding. Things are being processed. It's eliminating, and Peggy's kind of hopeful that maybe the shell will heal itself. Let's go back here for just a second. This was a great opportunity to see. So they've got two sets of, I believe these are called tentacles. And up on the top here, look at that. These are eyes on the end of those stalks. And then these are more for sensing. I think these lower ones, the snail kept touching Peggy's skin. And I think I don't know if it's like smelling or sensing, but there's definitely, sensory types of nerves go on that lower set of tentacles. And it was just kind of gliding along. You could sort of see here, it did leave a slimy trail up her arm. And this is one of several non-native creatures. We tried to identify, and I'm not good with snails. Peggy's not good with snails. We don't even know if this thing is indigenous to California. It might have been non-native from there as well, but it's a good lesson in how things accidentally get moved. I mean, there's a lot of things that get moved around on purpose, but things like this also get things like this can get moved around accidentally. And if this did happen to be the sort of snail that was, say, damaging to plant life or crops or something, without regulation, that could end up causing a big problem. It does have quite an appetite. It was Peggy's been feeding it different fruits and vegetables. It was eating lettuce. It was having a salad the night when I was there. But it is one of several creatures that she's had brought to her nature center that have come from other parts of the country. The local winery had two different times brought in. One time it was a western fence lizard that had come in with a load of grapes, and another time it was a tree frog that had come in with some grapes. And these little creatures get rescued as they're about to get crushed, and then Peggy takes them in and cares for them. So snails, lizards, frogs, lots of things moving around completely unintentionally. I have to say, I was a little envious of this snail because it was very peaceful to watch. Here you can see that's the little snail habitat she has set up here in the background here. But I never thought I would be as enamored of snails as I was of this one, but it was really very kind of cool and very soothing to watch it move along. All right, let's isn't this pretty? You may or may not be aware that Kane County, there's lots of volunteer monitoring programs that you can sign up for if you're local here. Frog monitoring is the one that I've been probably most closely involved with, but you can monitor butterflies, you can monitor dragonflies, you can monitor rare plants. Well, a couple of years ago, Barb over at Creek Bend Nature Center started a fungus monitoring program. And I'm not a participant in it, but I know several people who are, and I'm always fascinated by what they see and what they have learned and share in terms of fungus ID. This is a pretty common fungus. It's not edible. I don't think it's poisonous. I think it's just too tough to eat, but it's called crowded parchment. Crowded as in crammed together in parchment like paper. And it was funny, I guess I was dimly aware of it, but once it was pointed out to me, this thing is everywhere. I would say it's right up there with turkey tail in terms of being common. It's something that helps break down wood, so it's got an important job that it does. This particular example was taken at Norris Woods. There's a lot of downed wood at Norris trees that have come down over the last couple of years, and these fungi are helping to break it down so that all the good things that went into making that branch can be broken down into soil, and new trees can start to grow from it. But cool, pretty, and pretty common, the crowded parchment fungus. Very cool. We zoom in here, you can see the bottom of it is smooth. It doesn't have any pores or anything on it to distinguish it from, say, a turkey tail, which would have tiny little minute pores. Oh, I guess we're moving on. So also at Norris, and actually many places up and down the Fox River, the beavers have been really busy. So this, you might be able to tell from the way the bark is growing here. This was, well, it still is a red oak tree. It's no longer a standing red oak tree, but it's got the vertical lines, the ski tracks that you see on red oak bark. This tree came down when a beaver cuts a tree down. You might think, as humans would be interested in the big logs, but usually beavers, they want to bring the tree down so they can get at the smaller and more tender branches that are higher up, and the more portable branches too that are higher up on the tree. So they like to drop it down, but then the work that they do is actually not here on the trunk, but farther up on the tree. There's actually lots of works in progress here. This one, the tree kind of had a natural lean to it, so I would imagine it won't be too much longer before this one is down. It might even be down by now. This picture was taken last Friday. And some more. A lot of times people look at this and they call it beaver damage. I like to think of it as just, beaver sign. They're really, damage is a human term to them. This is important work that they're doing. It's part of their livelihood. They've taken
that one over there.
They're taking these down, but here they are feeding.
I did program it, so it's probably sitting on the bed.
So this big branch here, or trunk, is you can see how they feed. I always liken the way a beaver feeds to the way we feed, the way we eat corn on the cob. We don't eat the cob, we just eat the kernels on the outside. And the beaver, when they're feeding, they are not really interested so much in the inner or the heartwood. They are going for the outer or the living tissue of the tree, the inner bark, and then also the sapwood, the phloem and the xylem, which is where the nutrients, the phloem transports the nutrients up up and down, and the xylem or the sapwood also moves the water up and down. So that's the part that the beaver's interested in, and you can see where it did its feeding here. This one was kind of a combination. They did some feeding and they did some gnawing. This one looks like it was mostly being gnawed. A little bit more to go before that one comes down. And then one of our sharp-eyed nature nerds noticed, and I have to say, I've never seen this on the Fox River. I have never done a comprehensive study of beaver activity on the Fox, so it could be this happens more than I realize. But I'd never seen beavers actually building a structure on the Fox River. They typically live in the bank. They will dig an entrance into what then turns into kind of a burrow, but that entrance is underneath the water surface, which makes it pretty predator proof. There's not a lot of creatures that will swim down into the entrance hole and then enter into the beaver's den. But if you look way over here on the other side, now this is facing west. Norris Woods is on the east side of the river, so we're looking west. This is actually Fearsome Creek Fen over here. Look at that. They are building a lodge along the river. Usually a lodge is built after the beavers dam up an area. They slow the flow down and they increase the depth of the water, and then they build a lodge. But this sure as heck looks like they are building a lodge right on the river without damming anything. Now this is there is a bit of an inlet here. If we look back here, so what we're looking at is right here, if we can zoom in at all, but there is a little that is in just a little bit there, a kind of an inlet. It's not where the current is super strong, but I'm anxious to see how that structure develops over time. I don't know. This is all pretty soggy through here. I don't know if there's any way we could get a trail camera on this, but I bet you even on a night like this, it is the temperatures are going to start trending downward a little bit, but I think the beavers, they have that wonderful 2-ply coat that keeps them warm and pretty dry too. So I think even on a night like this, there's going to be activity out there as they continue to make that that lodge bigger. Super cool. So yeah, we'll see. And it's a great spot to build something too. This is all well within the boundaries of Fearsome Creek Fen, which is a nature preserve. They're not really harming anything. It's interesting that they're bringing the building materials over from Norris Woods, which is across the river, but a lot of what's growing over here isn't all that great. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of dead ash trees and stuff back here. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that, and we'll see what becomes of this beaver lodge activity. Now, speaking of beaver, so yesterday, I think we promoted this the last time we got together. Yesterday was the first day or the New Year's Day hike down in Kendall County, which that's an event that had some sort of humble beginnings in 1967. A gentleman named Del Legao wanted to do something besides sit around and watch football on New Year's, so he went out and walked around. He had some friends join him, and each year since then, the event's gotten larger. The Boy Scouts latched onto it and grew it some more. And these days, it's still heavily, there's still a lot of scout support there. A lot of scouts come out, but it's also taken on a charitable aspect, and people will bring donations of cans of soup that are then taken to the Kendall County Food Pantry. So for the last several years, this event has taken place at Hoover Forest Preserve. And I was lucky enough to be there yesterday, and then to preview the hike, I was there on Saturday. And there's beaver activity at Hoover as well. It's a little hard to see here, but beaver tracks are one of the, I think of those as some of the holy grail of animal signs. You really have to have the right conditions and be in the right place at the right time to see what's going on. Now, what I didn't capture in this picture is a chewed off tree over here on stage right, but here's a better look at this would be the hind foot of the beaver. You can sort of see the toes here and the webbing in between. Maybe you can't. I swear though, I'm not making this up. But and I didn't it was so there was a eroded bank, and then this mud down there was really soft. I wasn't able to get down close to it. I wasn't able to put a lip balm next to it for size, but I would guess from here where these toes are back to where the heel is here, that was probably about 5 inches or so. It was a good sized track. There was activity here as well. It's even harder to see, so we're not going to spend too much time on that. But yeah, the beavers are really taking advantage of this extended warmth. Granted, it's not summertime temperatures, but it's not frozen. The river is not frozen. These animals are perfectly capable of being active at the 30s and 40s that we've had these last few weeks. So they're definitely taking advantage of it. And so are these guys. I'm hoping this will play. Let's see, is that? I'm gonna play it again. You hear that? That's robin singing. Now, so I took this video on my way to get the Park District van to go to the New Year's Day hike. And I was listening to some music in my one ear, and I had an earbud in it. It wasn't just voices in my head, but I was walking along and I realized that I was hearing other music from the ear that didn't have an earbud. And lo and behold, there were, I would guess, I don't know, 50 robins up in these trees here. Now, this is a street that has a lot of crabapple trees. The city has planted because I'm thinking because of the wires that are going along the street. They wanted something that had a lower growth habit. So this whole street is planted in crab apples. And I see robins there every winter, but I don't recall hearing them singing. So I guess, I don't know if this is a way of, I've been puzzling over why they would be singing now. Usually I associate robins singing with, you know, territory as it relates to nesting and breeding, but maybe they also sing when they are being territorial about food. I don't know, but they're in flocks. They're not in pairs at this point. It's not, but there were a lot of robins singing, and there's a lot of food. So I'm thinking there must be some sort of a connection there. It was just kind of weird to be hearing robins singing on New Year's Day, but it was worms on Christmas, robins on New Year's. Who knows? Maybe the robins had worms on Christmas too. I just didn't see that part. Definitely a warm twist to this winter we've been having. Now we're going to wrap up here with a look at a plant. So this it was again back at the New Year's hike, and Miss Bonnie happened to notice these berries growing in a cluster at the end of a vine. Now, you might know if you are familiar with the vines we have in our woods, we've got some berries that look like this, and it can grow one of two ways. One is at the end of the vine, and one is at the axils along the vine. Those are kind of the two hallmarks of the vine we know of as bittersweet. Now there's Oriental bittersweet, which is the invasive, and then there's American bittersweet, which is the native. And the native has berries that grow on the ends. Now, look at where this is. This is right next to the picnic pavilion at Hoover Forest Preserve in Yorkville. Usually around a pavilion. You know, there's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of human traffic. So the expectations for rare or unusual plants is kind of low. Usually what you see is a lot more invasives. And there was quite a bit of honeysuckle where this bittersweet was growing. But it's kind of looking, let's see, did I put, yeah, it's sort of hard to see here, but if we zoom in, so this is all bittersweet, this tangled vine here. This is bittersweet going up this tree. And if we zoom in, you see it's the fruit is at the ends of the vine, which is again the identifier for the American. Now, Kim, one of our nature nerd friends, did point out or mention that she had heard that Oriental bittersweet and American bittersweet will hybridize, and you'll get characteristics of both plants present in one. So she did take a little sample, and she was going to have one of the forest preserve plant experts take a look at it and give his expert opinion on it. But it did appear as though there is the real deal, some American bittersweet growing next to the picnic pavilion at Hoover Forest Preserve in Yorkville. Kind of cool, huh? That's a good way to end. Let's stop the share here and go back. It looks like we got a couple other chats here. Okay, I've heard that the second squirrel nest could be a decoy. I've heard that too during the nesting season. In fact, when they're raising young, I've heard that sometimes the male who really does not play a role, like he's kind of an absentee father, but they will return to a nest to pluck out and drop down or kill the male offspring to reduce competition in an area. I don't know if that's a characteristic of fox squirrels as well as gray squirrels, but I have heard that male gray squirrels will do that. And so I've heard that the female will sometimes create a decoy nest to throw him off of where the babies actually are. Would work with predators too, though. So that could be. Maybe it was meant to just be a fake nest all along, so they didn't spend a lot of time building it. And that's why it fell. You like the snail too, huh? Yeah, it was just so peaceful watching it slither along there. And I know some people get grossed out with slime, but those little eye stalks, it was just, I don't know what kind of vision snails have, but it was just very cool thing to watch. And I'm just a little bit envious. Actually, that reminds me, last summer, I had found a Chinese mystery snail, which is an invasive species here in the Fox River. I was scooping for macroinvertebrates for something. I can't remember what I was getting ready for, but here's this snail in the net. I didn't want to put it back in the river. It's still living. It's in a jug with some Elodia or anacris and some duckweed. It's on the shelf down in my the lower level down in the family room. I should probably check it. I don't get the calming, peaceful vibes from the mystery snail. In fact, they kind of smell bad, and they carry diseases and everything. But I suppose I should go check on it, make sure it's still doing okay. But yeah, if Peggy ever wants to put her snail up for adoption, I think I might apply because it's pretty cool. That's all I had for you this week, folks. Again, thanks for tuning in. I hope you're looking forward to a happy rest of your first week and a healthy rest of your year. We'll be back again next Tuesday.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Pam.
See you soon.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye.
Thanks, Pam.
Night, guys. Thank you.